Good afternoon. My name is Santiago Romero, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the Industrial Revolution. My group is composed by Carlos Alvarado, Alejandro Aldana, Giovanni Echeverria, Mario Cruz, and me. What is the Industrial Revolution? The Industrial Revolution was a period of scientific and technological development in the 18th century that transformed largely rural agrarian societies, especially in Europe and North America, into industrialized urban ones, as stated in history.com. The Industrial Revolution was a period of urban development in which factories previously running workers were slowly replacing much more efficient machines.
What was the start of the Industrial Revolution? Industrial Revolution began in the 8th century, in 1760, when the societies began to become more industrial and urban. Railroads, electricity, and cotton changed drastically in societies. All this happened because the societies kept improving and getting better tools and machines.
Inventions of the Industrial Revolution.
A steam locomotive. In 1801, Trevithick invented a road steam locomotive. In 1813, built Puffing Billy for use in the mines of William Hedley, and George Stephenson's locomotive a year later. Followed, steam locomotives were first developed in the United Kingdom. This was very useful to carry heavy things more easily and faster.
Quarterly. Britain's natural resources include large amounts of iron ore. Better quality iron was made in the 1780s when Henry Ford developed a process called quarterly, which used coke extracted from coal to burn the impurities in the pig iron, which produced high quality iron.
Water power loom. Edmund Cartwright invented a water power loom in 1787. With his loom, workers could now leave clothes as fast as spinners produce thread. This was a really important invention for the Industrial Revolution and really changed the game in some way in that time.
The steam engines in the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines were really important technology. This makes the steam trains made transportation of goods better, more efficient, and faster to do. Steam did not replace water. Only after the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain, steam engines not only help with transportation, but also help with machines that made the make of goods faster and easier. As you can see, steam engines were really the base of every single of every single invention that we're going to talk about in this presentation. Since steam engines are the earliest technology in combustion and the work for trains and other inventions.
Railroads in Industrial Revolution. Railroads was discovered by George Stephenson. The railroads allowed people to move to cities and new places faster. The business of trains increased the profits on people's goods. Railroads were a great success in Industrial Revolution in terms of time and movement.
Spinning jenny. It was in 1764 by James Hargreaves in Stonehill in England. This device helped to make the production of clothes faster and reduce the work that employers had to do in every cloth made. It was developed as a metal with 8 wooden spindles at one end. The Robinson extended passed through 2 horizontal bars of wood that could clasp it together.
Cotton in Industrial Revolution. Cotton was an important factor in Industrial Revolution, helping in the mechanical hard treatment in the machineries.
Electricity in Industrial Revolution. Electricity was discovered by Michael Faraday in 1831. Electricity was great in the Industrial Revolution. It allowed people in many areas in society, such as street lighting, road transport, industry before it came into homes. So we can say Electricity first was for the big industries and for the businesses and the big corporations, and then it became more normal as today for the homes and for the normal people that did not have the big factories.
Now we're going to talk about some problems of the Industrial Revolution. First of all, we have poor working conditions. Employees were forced to work long working hours in very risky conditions, and they were paid very little. This means that employees in the Industrial Revolution were treated very harshly. They didn't have health care. They were probably abused. They didn't have any rights, and they were paid very little amounts. So they could barely eat and they could barely live for themselves.
They also have some poor living conditions. The air was very polluted and everything was very contaminated, so they were very exposed to diseases, and a lot of people were very poor and had very scarce resources. This means then that as people were creating more machines and more steam steam based machines, um, pollution was becoming greater and greater until much of our air was contaminated and people tend to get sick more often.
Low wages. Men were paid 10 shillings per week, women 5, and children just 1. 1 shilling was 83 cents of dollar. This means a family working the three of them can maximum get 16 shillings per week. That was very little for living 3 persons.
Child labor. Children didn't go to school. They were forced to work in different fields and they were paid very, very little. So this talks about how back then they abused children, making them work really hard jobs and not paying them, not having like normal life that every children has today, like playing or going to school. They had to work and like my classmate Alejandro said, they were paid very, very little.
Pollution. Pollution was a really big aspect of the industrial revolution. All the fabrics pollute a lot of the atmosphere, and this took a lot of health problems and diseases. Some of my other teammates have said, pollution keeps for to today a problem from the industrial revolution and keeps affecting to us since then and in the current times.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about who not invented the Industrial Revolution, but we could say popularized the Industrial Revolution. And this is Arnold Toynbee. As we know, the Industrial Revolution started in Britain, but this doesn't mean that it didn't happen in other countries. Arnold Toynbee, what he did was that he showed Britain's economic development and popularized it to the French, to the United States, to Germany, and to other first world countries at the time. So you could say that he basically made publicity for the Industrial Revolution, and really he was the one who expanded the Industrial Revolution worldwide.
Cottage industry. The cottage industry is a term that historians use to identify production that was completed before the start of the Industrial Revolution.
What ended the Industrial Revolution? Britain's natural resources included large amounts of iron ore. Better quality iron was made in the 1780s when Henry Quart developed a process called puddling, which used coke extracted from coal to burn the impurities in the pig iron, which produced high quality iron.
Steamboat. Steamboats were an important invention developed during the Industrial Revolution to improve trade and passenger transport. especially along rivers. It was invented in the United States by Robert Fulton using a combination of several previously developed inventions and concepts.
Now, some interesting facts of the Industrial Revolution.
Well, first we can say that all began with Britain. It began with Britain, but then it expanded to other parts of the world. Britain was the world's leading economy and leading nation at the time. But then it expanded to the bigger countries in Europe, like Germany, Spain, and all those places which had a good development until it expanded to all the world. But first, it began with Britain, which was the country, the home of the Industrial Revolution, and that helped the development in all the world. And by the 20th century, the British Empire was the biggest in history.
Now we can say that it all started with coal. As I said before, the Industrial Revolution really ran on steam engines. And steam engines needed coal to run. This means that trains, locomotives, and other steam-powered machines needed a lot of coal to run. So coal was in high demand at that time. With the entry of steam engines and other machines, as I said, into Great Britain's combustion was needed to run the machines. That is when coal came in. Coal helped in creating heat for these steam engines to run. This meant that the coal was needed in vast amounts. Now, some main ideas of the Industrial Revolution.
One of the main ideas in Industrial Revolution was the invention of machines to do the work of hand. People started creating these machines so that they can do faster and better works that they needed to do before with the hands. This means that when machines started replacing people, the reasons were that they were more efficient, they were faster, and machines didn't need to be paid, but they needed to be maintained.
The use of steam and later of other kinds of power. Steam was first used in Industrial Revolution for many things, like machines and transportations. But this was not the only kind of power used. Other kind of power used were coal, fire, and steam engines. Like Santiago said before, coal was used to get energy, but it was not enough. So they invented another ways like steam engines because all the fabrics and machines needed a lot of energy.
The adoption of the factory system. It was first used in Great Britain at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s.
Here we can see there's the bibliography where we can see all the information, and I would like to make a small conclusion that we can say Industrial Revolution, even though it was a lot of years ago, it's still affecting to this day. In some way, there are positive ways because the machines that were created have evolutionated, but also in a negative way because of the pollution and many of the styles that were used may have affect our world right now.
Yes, Mister, we can also say that like Mario said, Industrial Revolution is still carried on today, because nowadays a lot of professions are being taken over by machines. For example, cash registers. Now, in cash registers, we don't need people anymore, since robots and other AI centered machines can do this work for us. Thank you very much for your attention, Mister.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Have a nice day.